list. Danny Kruger.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I pay tribute to the Right Honourable Gentleman for East Ham for securing this debate. And there's been so much criticism of the government in this place this year, much of it, I'm afraid to say, very unfair and very political. But much of it has been fair and necessary in holding the government to account for things that are going wrong. What we don't hear often in this place, or from the other side, is recognition of what has gone right. And that's why I want to acknowledge the very generous spirit in which the Right Honourable Gentleman spoke about universal credit, and acknowledging it as I think he said, a national asset, which is a very good description of what has been achieved. And I honour the ministers at DWP for a tremendous success story of 2020. 3.2 million new UC claimants, nearly doubling the total caseload as I understand it. And despite all of the protests about universal credit over recent years, I don't think there's been a squeak of protest in this place about the process of onboarding those claims. And indeed, in my constituency of Devizes, we've had nearly 3,000 new UC claims. I've just checked, and I've had eight items of casework around universal credit in the course of this year, which is a fairly small proportion of my total caseload. So I honour what's been done, and my thanks also to JCP staff and all the staff at DWP. There are many heroes behind the scenes in our country working this year, and JCP staff are leaders among them. This will pay tribute to the coalition government, principally my right honourable friend, the member for Chingford and Wood Green, for his role in designing and implementing universal credit. And I just want to imagine what would have been the case if we'd stuck with the old system, the myriad of benefits, mostly on paper-based administration. It would have been a complete disaster. But we had a digital system, and so when millions of people suddenly needed unemployment benefits, the computer said yes. So on that topic, and the Right Honourable Gentleman raised the suggestion from his Select Committee in his report earlier this year that people should be able to go back to legacy benefits after being on universal credit. And it's certainly true that for some people, despite the significant increases in universal credit, they do appear to be worse off on universal credit. But as we've seen, and as I've just described, UC is a far more agile system, and its intention, the intention I think of the whole House, is to replace legacy benefits. And so I agree with the government's position that it would not be right to let people go back. And the Right Honourable Gentleman mentions mis-selling. I think surely that's an exaggeration, but I do wonder whether more can be done to explain to people what joining UC means, and to help make sure that they are able to check properly whether it's the right move for them. Mr Deputy Speaker, can I also congratulate DWP and more particularly Citizens Advice for their scheme Help to Claim, which DWP funds. And this is the beginning of the far more substantial system alongside universal credit that the Right Honourable Member for Chingford and Wood Green always intended to accompany universal credit. And the government is recruiting, I think, 13,500 new work coaches to work in job centres. It's absolutely tremendous that we're doing that. But people need more than coaches. They need training, they need professional support, they need peer support. They might have issues with addiction or debt or family problems. And so we need to create the systems which support job coaches, support individual job seekers. And so I urge the Minister to consider what more can be done to deepen Help to Claim, beyond the initial period of joining UC, to create a system that works with businesses and charities. And the gateway system for Kickstart, I think, potentially offers a model for this. It's very, very encouraging. The Right Honourable Gentleman mentioned the Future Jobs Fund. I think we want to do better than that, because that had quite a high dropout rate. The opportunity for the Kickstart scheme is to sustain those young people in employment, but in order to do that, we need to ensure that they have the right support around them, not simply the job placement itself. And that brings me finally, Mr Deputy Speaker, to a more strategic point about the principles of welfare. And I hope I won't be thought abstract or even flippant when I make this point. And I call in my defence Professor Simon Streeter of Cambridge University, who's made the same point. And he said we need to go back to the principles of the Elizabethan Poor Law. I'm not talking about the Victorian Poor Law, the Dickensian horrors of the workhouse and so on, but the original Poor Law of 1601 was the first comprehensive system of social security in this country. And as Professor Schroeter explains, it has two elements. First, it was local. It was funded from local taxation, and it was paid out to people flexibly according to their needs. And second, it encouraged altruism and social responsibility by the wealthy through incentives to create almshouses and colleges and churches. Now, I don't propose going back to those days, but those are the principles that we need, a more local and more flexible approach, and one in which the wealthy, by which I mean businesses in today's age, play a central role in supporting local communities and helping people into employment Right Honourable Gentleman mentions the need for a more dependable social security system, and I entirely agree. I support everything the government is doing to help people facing unemployment, and I hope for a more substantial reform in due course.